To sport now, and Charlton Athletics return to their old home. Valley is in doubt tonight after a row with Greenwich Council. The club have told planners, back us or we won't be coming back.
At a news conference, there was fighting talk from Charlton directors. Greenwich Council want them to drop their insistence on 30,000 square feet of offices and a banqueting suite as the club's price for a return home to the Valley. Currently, Charlton's only link with the borough is a training area 12 miles away from Crystal Palace's ground, which they've shared for the past 4 years. The club was forced to move when the Valley was ruled unsafe. With passions running high, there's even talk of supporters contesting the seats of councillors who oppose the plans. Club bosses say it's only worth them building a new football stadium at Charlton if the prime site they own is developed commercially.
We're prepared to make minor amendments. We're prepared to be cooperative in all aspects, but not to the basic principle of the scheme, which has been known to the council now for the last 4 months.
No offices, no banqueting suite, no football stadium?
No planning approval, no return to the Valley.
Greenwich Council say they're also concerned about traffic congestion caused by parking in residential areas on match days. They've spent 2.5 years trying to find an alternative location in the borough.
I hope that we can come to a settlement. But it takes two to make a deal, and so far, Charlton has not been prepared to move, as far as I can see, 1 inch.
On Saturday, Charlton are at home to Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park, Palace's home. Confused? Well, you won't be next season if Charlton return to the Valley. A crunch meeting between the club and Greenwich Council chiefs on Thursday could decide that. Mark
The board called for the abolition of terraces at football grounds. Charlton's plans to become the first league club to build an all-seater stadium are expected to be scrapped. Greenwich Council is expected to throw out the club's multi-million-pound scheme to return to their former home at the Valley.
Charlton say their plans for the Valley are just what Lord Justice Taylor ordered. 25,000 seats, no standing room, brand new facilities for fans, and a host of commercial ventures which will help finance it all. The club chairman Roger Alwyn has seen Greenwich planners' final report, and it's bad news.
I'm still hopeful that tomorrow evening, with the support that we're going to get at the meeting, that the councillors could overturn the officers' opinion.
How likely is that, then?
Well, I understand that it does happen, but it doesn't happen very often. But I think this is a one-off situation, and I think after Monday's report from Lord Justice Taylor, I think we may well get a decision in our favour.
Charlton currently share a ground with Crystal Palace. The fans hate it, and the club are losing £500,000 a year as a result. Tomorrow night, about 1,500 supporters will march from the Valley to Woolwich Town Hall to lobby the council meeting. Whatever the verdict, they're determined to be heard.
How disappointed are the fans with the news that, at the moment, you will not be coming back to the Valley?
Fans are desperately disappointed. It's the worst possible news. As we've said, the team's in a fairly precarious position at the bottom of the First Division and Second Division football at Selhurst Park. No one would like to contemplate that because the implications for the club could be terrible, could be disastrous.
If the planners, as expected, turn down Charlton's bid to return to the Valley, there is one last chance open to them. It is that the full council will be so embarrassed by the decision in the light of the Taylor report that they overrule the planning committee. Tomorrow night will be another important one in the history of Charlton Football Club. This is Graham Miller for Thames News at the...
Plans for a new all-seater football stadium in southeast London are expected to be thrown out at a meeting of Greenwich Council due to start in a few minutes' time. Charlton Athletics' new stadium complies with all the recommendations made in the Taylor report published earlier this week. But council planning officers are recommending that the scheme is rejected, putting the future of the club in serious doubt. Duncan Kennedy reports.
Charlton's ambitious plans for an all-seater stadium come in the same week Lord Justice Taylor published his Hillsborough report, calling for new, safer super stadia. But club chairman Roger Alwyn says if the scheme doesn't get the backing of Greenwich Council tonight, the club's whole future is in doubt.
We've been ground sharing since October '85 with Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park. Unfortunately, the fans will not make the journey. It's a difficult journey, and to secure the future of the club, we need to come back into the borough and we need to come back home.
The publicity campaign waged by fans in support of their chairman has been extensive. They're so concerned Greenwich Council won't support the new scheme, they form their own political party to fight their case.
We'll be standing in the local elections against the councillors because we feel that they ought to come out individually and state whether they're in favour of Charlton returning to the valley.
And how important is it to the supporters that it does return?
It's absolutely essential. There will be no club within the next 3 years unless we get back to the valley now.
But both supporters and club officials have come up against the objections of local MP Rosie Barnes, who says the new stadium would blight the lives of local residents.
They're particularly concerned about the traffic congestion, about the parking, about access to and from their homes on a Saturday. And they're also concerned about the proposed scale of the development, the office suite, the banqueting suite, which are also now part of the plan.
Greenwich Council's planning committee meet later tonight to consider the planning application, acutely aware that they have a balancing act to perform.
And that balance has to be between the needs and wishes of the supporters and the needs and wishes of local residents. And very clearly, there are severe misgivings amongst local residents as to the return of Charlton to the valley.
The 5-year absence of Charlton from the valley is a source of constant concern to supporters. With relegation to the second division a real possibility, they fear even fewer fans will make the trek to Selhurst Park. But with council officials recommending rejection of a new revamped valley, their wait is set to go on.
Live, who's outside Greenwich Town Hall this evening. Good evening, Duncan.
Good evening, Guy. You join us here at Woolwich Town Hall, where literally hundreds of people have just gone into the meeting, which starts in about 25 minutes' time. I've got some of the fans who were unable to get into tonight's meeting with me tonight. I can start with you firstly. Why have you come along?
I've come along to see Greenwich Council approve the planning application to see Charlton back at the valley.
What about those local residents we've just heard in the report who are saying that they don't want a new ground there?
I'm afraid the local residents must accept that there's been a football ground there for 70 years and Charlton's got existing user rights and as such should be allowed to use the stadium.
You've been a supporter for more than 50 years. Why have you come?
Since 1938, for the same reason, to give my support to Charlton. I can see no reason why they shouldn't let us go back to the valley. The plans that they've put forward are completely in accordance with Lord Justice Taylor's recommendations. The local residents, we've been there since 1921. Our first league match was on August the 27th, 1921. There's no reason at all why we shouldn't go back. We're one of the best crowds in the country. We have the best record in the first and second divisions. We will never cause trouble. Okay, on match days there'll be a few cars around, but that can be overcome.
What do you think tonight's outcome will be?
Well, I think Greenwich, as usual, have their high-minded and arbitrary approach. They haven't listened to the fans. There are a few letters they've received, not all that many from objectors, not enough to really go against what all these hundreds of people here want to do. We want to go back to the valley. We don't cause any trouble. We should be going back. Greenwich should listen to us, not to their own political views, not to their objections to the chairman and to the football team. They should listen to us.
Well, clearly some disappointed fans who haven't got into tonight's meeting. Several hundred had, and we hope to bring you the result of that meeting in our 9:25 bulletin.
Yes, it's D-Day for Charlton, and they plan to convert the valley into a modern 25,000 all-seater stadium. It's a move which would satisfy the government and the fans' campaign to return to the club's traditional home. But a recommendation by borough planners to reject the scheme has prompted an angry protest from supporters. Here's John Gubber.
More than 200 fans set off from the valley a short while ago in a march to Woolwich Town Hall, where the crucial vote will be taken by the Labour-controlled council. They hope their 2-mile march through Greenwich will show the strength of their support and persuade the council to overturn the recommendation to block the valley proposals. If tonight's verdict goes against Charlton, the supporters have vowed to contest all 36 wards at the local elections in May in a bid to press their campaign for a return to the valley. And feelings are clearly running high. With the meeting now due to get underway in the next quarter of an hour, the number of protesters is growing to a substantial size. All the seats inside the hall have long been taken, and for the rest it's an anxious wait on the pavement outside.
And we hope to bring you the verdict in our late bulletin at 10:30.
Absolutely no point in listening to those chaps in there. They've decided the whole issue without taking any account of the evidence that's been presented tonight, and clearly they should have sat around the table months ago and sorted this out with the club directors.
We are passionate about Charlton Athletic staying in Charlton for South London to shine for the future and in the 90s and in the years to come for our children's children.
And we've just heard that Greenwich councillors have turned down the plan for an all-seater stadium at the Valley.
Charlton were thrashed 10-2 by the council last night. This is what the club proposed for the new valley. Greenwich planners said nice scheme, but wrong place. They want a more modest look, more sensitive, they say, to the needs of the locals and their environment. The voice of the supporters was loud and clear as they lobbied the meeting last night. Up to 1,000 surrounded Greenwich Town Hall, marching there from the valley and Floyd Road. They now fear the worst.
If we don't go back to the valley, Charlton are dead. Within 2 years, we'll be finished.
The supporters club will simply immediately put into operation a plan to contest all 36 wards at the next local council election.
Today, as the dust settled, the question remains, what happens next?
I think that what next needs to happen is for the board of Charlton Athletic and the council planning department to sit down together to discuss what scale of commercial development the council would be likely to allow on the site. We all know and recognise that the club can't afford to build the stadium without some commercial element, and it's the scale of that commercial element which is the matter which I think we need to be negotiating on.
Charlton chairman Roger Alwyn will meet with his board next Monday to decide what to do. He could appeal, he could compromise the plans, he could seek an extension to the club's lease at Selhurst Park, which expires next year. But he says Charlton won't be giving up.
No question at all. I mean, nobody at Charlton ever gives up. Nobody throws the towel in, on and off the field. If we hadn't got a battle on somewhere, it wouldn't be Charlton. Unless local authorities get their blinkers off, Lord Justice Taylor is going to find that a lot of his report will be totally worthless.
Charlton want to return to the valley, but Greenwich Council turned down their ambitious plans on Wednesday night. Tomorrow, Charlton are at home at ground shared Selhurst Park to Arsenal.
Charlton have always been aware of their past, which, lacking a permanent home, is now on display at their training ground. In 1947, they won the FA Cup. They had to give the cup back, of course, but kept a programme and even the ball. On Wednesday night, Greenwich Council turned down Charlton's plans to return to a replanned valley.
The two owners have decided which way to move now. I mean, they've either got to pursue the thing and try and get us back to the valley with perhaps a restructured planning application, or forget about it altogether, or involve themselves in another ground sharing scheme with Crystal Palace. I mean, there's 2 or 3 routes, and they have to decide which route to take. As far as we're concerned on the playing side, you know, we've just got to get on with it.
Does it unsettle you personally at all?
Well, it does to some extent. I mean, it's a disappointment. We've waited a long time for this planning meeting to take place, longer than necessary in my humble opinion. And although it doesn't come as a great surprise to me that the thing was rejected, it obviously was a big disappointment for a large number of the supporters.
I think as a player you don't really experience too much pressure, although you do experience the ground sharing, etc. For me, it's the only experience in Football League that I've ever had. But when you go to away grounds and you see the atmosphere and the supporters that get behind the team, I think it's very important. And when we play at Crystal Palace, because it's so far away from Charlton, we don't really get the support that we should be getting.
Result, Ian, didn't they? I really don't know. I mean, can they keep doing it? Jones scores the goal here. Brilliantly
well taken,
yeah. It's difficult to say. It's hard, isn't it? Every year they've been battling on and on and on. They've not got their own ground. We all know the problems that they've got there. But there you go. That was a lovely chip by Colin Walsh. The only thing I can honestly say is a message to Greenwich Council: give them back their ground, you miserable sods.
Struggling a bit, Jim, but
they are.
They play such good football. I would dearly love to see Charlton stay in it, because I do like the way they play the game.
I'd like to see them in it, and I'd like to see them back with their ground, as we've said. Yeah. Well,